Hello and welcome to Immediate Immersion Live, where we're all about comprehension-based instruction in the modern language classroom. How's everybody doing today? You already see the banner up here. Our Comprehended Conference is going strong. If still tickets are available, if you'd like to register for 3, 6, 9, or 12 months, you can go right here to comprehended.co and register. Also, we also have our Beyond the Basics course that will elevate your CI practice beyond those basics that they always teach you. So if that's something you're interested in, you can join our 10 class course. It's pre-recorded, so you can watch whenever you find comfortable. And you get a year worth of access once you sign up. You can go to mm.us/beyond. The doors will be closing on this shortly, so if it is something that you're interested in, you want to be able to get on board quickly. And with that, let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to talk about today. And that is transferring your traditional assessments into proficiency-based assessments. And we'll talk more about that in just one moment. I'll be right back. And welcome back. So today, that's what we're talking about, is assessments and making them from a traditional assessment into something more proficiency-based. So let's talk about making that instant upgrade. To take that can I speak today? Sorry, it's been a long day. I had to work all day. And on my prep too, someone didn't show up today and the sub didn't show, so I had to cover on my prep. So it's been a long day. But that instant upgrade where you can take any traditional test and move it into some kind of proficiency powerhouse. So the first thing you want to do with those traditional tests is shift from recall to communication, because recall just doesn't cut it anymore. Back in the 80s, that was the be-all, get-all for assessments. No matter what subject you were teaching, you regurgitated the information, the kids recalled it back for you, and they got their grade. But that doesn't work anymore, especially not in language. Just because they can recall the vocabulary or recall a grammar rule doesn't mean they can actually communicate. And so we want them to move beyond the memorization by designing test items that require real world language use. And so that's what we're trying to get through here. So think about what you have in your assessments and what you actually want to measure, and find a way to transform that from a memorization activity to something that requires real world language use. It could be something like actually having a conversation. Who knew? That is actual real world language use. Or not just reading for information, but reading something or listening something and then doing something substantive with that. So perhaps, a la the AP exam, where they're listening to something and they take that information and perhaps then they come up with some questions about it to ask somebody, the author of what they heard or what they've read, to ask some questions about that, or to take that information and change it up a bit and use that in another piece, whether it be a speaking piece or a writing piece, things that you'd actually do. So think about that. When people read an article, when people listen to a podcast or something, what do they actually do with that information? And we want to mimic that somewhat in the classroom to the best of our abilities. And we want to stop using those multiple choice questions and move to an open-ended prompt. And not an open-ended where they can answer in a really quick one word or a very short phrase. We want something more in depth. So, for example, instead of what does comer mean, ask something like, what did you eat for breakfast? They're communicating here. They're telling you about something. So this can start a conversation, or it could be a letter that they're writing to someone, or, they put a really modern twist on it. You know how kids are always taking pictures of the food they eat and putting it on Instagram? So have them um, take a picture or draw a picture or use clip art to make a picture, but then have them write a caption in the target language about what they ate for breakfast. So these are real communicative type activities where kids are doing things that happen in the real world. They can also add context to sentence completions. So they can not only finish the sentence, but then they can add other sentences around it to build the context of that information. And that's also really helpful because they're demonstrating not just concrete knowledge. To build contextual sentences around it, they have to have a deeper understanding. So think things like, instead of the fill in the blank, yo, form of verb ser, estudiante, I, to be, student, provide some type of a scenario. Your friend asks about you. Respond in a full sentence. So they have to talk about that. And even a sentence is too low level. I like them to do at least a short paragraph, 2 or 3 sentences, to be able to get full credit. Just one sentence, that is probably just going to be like a C-type grade for me. I'm looking for a little bit more, and I'm always looking for more detail. So the more they give me, the better chance the grade is. And it doesn't have to be perfect target language, grammatically speaking. It has to be understandable, and it has to communicate a message that someone understands, and then they would get the credit. And you can also use, question chains for deeper thinking. So think that instead of translating, where do you live, ask, where do you live? Who do you live with? What's your neighborhood like? This is something that I do, and I train my kids when we are doing conversations, because I don't just ask, where do you live, and then move on to the next student. I am going deeper with that. Who do you live with? What's your neighborhood like? Do you have any pets? All of those types of things. I don't just go for the basic answer. What did you do over the weekend? And they go, I went to the movies, and leave it at that. No. What movie did you see? Did you like the movie? What type of movie was it? Um, who did you go with? What did you eat? How did you get there? What time did you see the movie? Was it at night, or was it in the afternoon, or was it in the morning? Where did you go to see the movie? Did you watch it on Netflix or a streaming service? Did you go to the movie theater? Did you go to your friend's house? All those types of things, to keep those chains of questions going, to go more in depth. Because this is what happens in real life. When you meet your teacher bestie at the lunch table, or at the water cooler, or checking your mailbox, and it's Monday and they ask you to over the weekend, they don't just go, oh, okay. You have a conversation, more questions and more information is exchanged. And that's what we want to do with this as well, with our students, to make it more communicative. So it's not just rolling through, yep, we practice the vocabulary, yep, we practice the grammar, that we are actually using the language in real life ways. If you have any questions while we're talking, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm always willing to answer your questions. And also, if you're watching this on the replay, thank you. Go ahead and put your questions in the comment section, and I'll be sure to answer them. And before I forget, because I always do, Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with other people who you think might benefit from it. It really helps get the video out to see more people, and that's really important. So let's go ahead and talk about making our assessments interactive so that it's not just a passive type experience. So the first thing you want to do is replace isolated tasks with dynamic, real life applications of language. So find those things and make them more dynamic, more real life. Think about, how would we do this in the real world? So you can incorporate choice-based response formats. Let's say students choose how they answer: a short written response, an audio clip, or a quick video. You can also use image-based prompts for spontaneous responses. This really works well for your pre-literate students or students that are on their third language. They may not be English proficient yet, so images work really, really well. So you could show a picture of a park and ask, describe what you see. What do people do here? But don't just stop there with just simple descriptions. For them to get the full credit, have them make predictions, explain what happened before or after this picture, or why what's happening in the picture is happening, because those things will help expand their language ability and show more proficiency, therefore earning them a better grade. You can also turn test questions into mini conversations. So instead of translate, I like pizza, you can ask a question something like, tell me about your favorite food. What do you like? Why? And then add those chain questions back in. Where do you get this? Do you make this at home? Do you buy it at a fast food restaurant? Or do you buy it like in the deli section of the grocery store? Um, why do you like this particular food? Who do you eat this particular food with? All of these types of things get kids interacting with the assessment rather than just read a question, answer, read a question, and answer. And interviews are really good for this because we're getting that interpersonal. They're listening and then answering questions, or they could be reading and answering questions, and you can get a real good format for that. And if you don't have time to talk to each kid individually because of class time limits, there are lots of apps that really do this really, really well and can make it happen for you. My choice is formative.com. I don't have any relationship with them other than I pay them $15 a month to use it, but I absolutely love this app. Quizzes is another one. I prefer Formative. Quizzes is provided by my school district. I pay for Formative out of my pocket because I like it better. But lots of learning management systems will also be able to do this as well. But what I do is I'll pre-record an interview, and then my kids will record their responses to the questions. The thing I don't like about this is I can't adapt my questions to what my students are saying. For example, I can't do this. If I, like in real life conversation, I ask them what they did over the weekend, and they said they went bowling with their friends on a test situation using formative or quizzes or your learning management system. I will ask the question, what did you do over the weekend in the target language? And they can record an answer. But since I'm not live there, I can't follow up with follow-up questions like, where did you go bowling? Who did you go bowling with? What time did you go bowling? Who won the bowling? What was the score? Etc., etc., etc. I would just have to ask, hello, what's your name? My name is. How old are you? I'm so many years old. What did you do over the weekend? I went bowling. What are you wanting to do next weekend? Those types of questions, they're just static, but it is a form of interpersonal because they are listening to a question and then answering that question. And you have evidence because it's recorded. And if you're limited with time within your classroom because you can't interview everybody in the time frame you have, this is a great alternative. The point is to try to keep it all communicative and interactive. Have them do something physical like talking or writing with it, not just simple multiple choice type questions. Our last topic tonight is going to be focusing on meaning over mechanics. It took years for ACTFL to finally figure this out, and even more years for the AP exam to figure this out. It is more important that meaning be communicated than meaning be communicated correctly. I know we're teachers. We want them to be as accurate as possible, but not for the sake of being creative or communicating real meaning. Here's an example in real life. Let's say you're going to the grocery store or you're going to the bank, and the person who's helping you, English is not their first language. And they make some grammatical mistakes. Maybe they use the wrong preposition or the wrong tense, or they forget to put the S on the third person singular, something dumb like that. Now, technically, they're not speaking English correctly. But did you understand what they said? Was meaning conveyed? If so, guess what? You move on and you do what, you move on with your day. If not, you don't point out and say, well, the third person singular in English has the verb ending S. So you can't say he say, you have to say he says. We don't do that. We usually, if we can't gain the meaning, we usually, say, I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Or ask a clarifying question. We don't correct them. And you want to do the same thing with kids because it's not about the mechanics. The mechanics will come, and mechanics come slowly. Look, if you've had your own children, think how slowly they learned the grammatical aspects of their first language. Hispanic kids always say tieno before tengo. They always say, what's the other word they do? Sabo before they learn say. English kids, they make the mistake all the time with the past tense. They say singed and goed and runned. It takes a while for them to get over those and get those mechanics correct. So let's not worry about that right now. We're going to focus on meaning. So we start by assessing what students communicate and what they're able to communicate, not just what they can recall. I hate doing story retells. Why? Because it's low language brain functioning. Recalling is low on Bloom's taxonomy. I want them to do something with that information. So I will ask them to either tell me what happened before the story started, or tell me what happened after the story ended, or I'll say change the ending, something like that. So they have to take what they remember and either add to it or change it in some way. This way, they're actually showing me their creativity and that they're not just recalling the information, they're actually manipulating it, showing me much greater proficiency than they would in any other way. And then you want to grade these holistically using a simple rubric. So it could be something as simple as the student wasn't able to understand my question. The student answered in a few words or less. A student answered in a complete sentence. a student answered in a complete sentence and gave me more. That more can depend on the type of question. It could be a more detailed answer. It could be a throwing it back. If it's like a conversation that they threw it back to you, like, oh, what would you do over the weekend? I did blah, blah, blah. And what did you do over the weekend? It could be something like that. It could be a very simple rubric like that, so it's really easy to click. And I know with formative, what I love about it, you can also add rubrics. So each question has a rubric, and I can just click on the parts of the rubric, and then it gives that question an overall score. It really, really helps me and makes my job really, really quick. And you want to score these on clarity, comprehensibility, and fluency rather than grammar perfection. If you know me, my two main points of my rubrics are, was it comprehensible and how complex were the sentences? So comprehensible has to do with clarity, and grammar has a part in that comprehensible, because if the grammar is so bad that I can't understand who's doing it or when it was done, that's going to affect comprehensibility. And then the fluency is expressed by how complex the sentences. Are they using short, simple sentences? Are they using compound sentences, linking two sentences together with ands, buts, or ors? Or are they going full hog and giving me complex sentences with subordinate clause, with because, therefore, sinces, or extremely detailed sentences? All of those types of things go a long way to boosting up their grade. I am not looking for perfection. I am not nitpicking on the small errors. Big answers, subject verb agreement, yeah, that's affecting comprehensibility because I no longer know who's doing the verb. But overall comprehensibility is what I'm looking at, and then from there, then I will refine the grade by determining what kind of sentences the students are giving me. You want to replace the fill in the blank with short personal responses. Here they're giving you 1 to 3 sentences. Instead of conjugate the verb tener in this sentence, ask, write 2 things you have and 2 things you want. So they're going to have to actually take those conjugated verbs and put them in action, put them to use in a real sentence, because no one in the real world has ever asked a kid to conjugate a verb. That's a school thing. Even parents don't do this when they ask them when they're teaching them their first language. It's artificial. It's just not done. But they have to use the verb correctly to answer that question, and that will demonstrate whether they can conjugate the verb. You'll also want to allow self-correction as part of the assessment. That's important as well. So let students rephrase or revise their answers for partial credit to promote real-world language skills. We make mistakes all the time and we'll stop ourselves and make corrections. So allow them to do that. That the error, they were conscious enough of the error to be able to catch it themselves. Oh, excuse me, sorry, to catch it themselves and make the correction right then and there. That tells me that they are really close to acquiring that grammar point or that vocabulary point fully. They're not there yet because they made the mistake, but they caught the mistake quickly enough that it's right there, versus they didn't even know they made a mistake, which means they're far from mastering that. And see, all of these things that we talked about today, these strategies make proficiency-based assessment fast and effective and achievable without throwing away your entire test. You just have to make these minor tweaks back and forth, and then you can take your traditional test and convert it into a proficiency-based test. So if you especially tied with a textbook, I know we teach with a textbook and my colleagues usually take the questions right out of the textbook. There are better ways to do that, and we can take them and make them more communicative with just some small tweaks. And by doing so, you're getting so much more feedback about what your kids can do with the language versus then just filling in the blank or matching vocabulary words or a multiple choice test. They're actually doing something substantive with the language, which is demonstrating their proficiency level. So it was a short one tonight. I hope you got something from it. If you have gotten anything from this, please like and subscribe. As I said, it really does help. Share with other teachers who might benefit from this material. Next week, we are going to be doing an encore presentation. And I forgot, let me see what the title of that is. I always forget. I had it in my head a minute ago and it's lost. So next week, because it's my spring break, I'm taking the week off, but I'm going to go ahead and show an encore presentation. It will be transforming your textbook into engaging CI lessons. So I won't be there live. It will play as if it were live, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then you can still put comments in, ask questions in the comment section or in the chat section, and I will go back and I will answer them for you. But that'll be talking about next week. And I just want to give you a heads up. On April 24th, that's Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific, we have our next CI story with an everyday teacher who's using CI in their classroom, Gregory Schwab. So we'll be talking with him on April 24th. So that'll be in 2 weeks, Thursday. So I just want to give you a heads up for that so you can plan that ahead. And with that, I will say good night to everybody. I hope you have a wonderful week. And until next time, in 2 weeks, I'll see you live. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.